On June 6, 1944, 73,000 American soldiers stormed the beaches of Normandy, France on a deadly mission. Thousands of men died on those beaches, and for those who were still alive, they hope that their stories may never be forgotten. Thank you for joining me today for this very special documentary over the 75th anniversary of D-Day, remembering the stories of those who gave it all. I'm Megan Cole. I, along with 6 other reporters from MTSU, retraced the steps of those who fought for freedom on D-Day and the long summer that followed. We traveled from London to Portsmouth, crossed the English Channel into Caen. We walked along the beaches of Normandy and visited the final resting place where so many gave the ultimate sacrifice. When we got back, I spoke with 3 Middle Tennessee World War II veterans. These are their stories, and they are like so many others who still have trouble speaking of what they saw. World War II changed the course of history in so many ways. It ended the American Depression, created jobs, it started the United Nations and liberated countries. So now we look at why the war began and why it ended in victory. World War II. This would be one of the deadliest wars ever fought.
A lot of people saw a lot of things that were horrible.
After Germany invaded Poland, most of Europe was under attack. The United States was hesitant to join the fight until Pearl Harbor. Ed Covington, a World War II Army Air Forces veteran, said that he can remember every detail.
And the mosquitoes were something terrible at night. And then we also had a lot of cockroaches in the barracks that would run over you at night, wake you up, running down your back, or get in your shoes in the morning and almost kick you back out of your shoes. They were so big.
After the deaths of thousands of men and the atomic bomb in Japan, the war was finally over. 75 years and 1 Purple Heart later, Covington said he was proud to protect his country at whatever the cost.
We knew there was a job to be done, and that was the main thing, to protect our country. And so it wouldn't be under the heel of Hitler or the Japanese. And that was what, I guess, set us all along, that we didn't want to see our country subjugated to that. I felt pride at having served my country, and I still do. After all these years.
Omaha, Utah, Juneau, Sword and Gold. These beaches were where thousands of soldiers gave their lives and washed away into the sea. While these beaches may have looked horrific 75 years ago, they're now a symbol of hope and sacrifice for generations to come. On June 6, 1944, thousands of soldiers perished in the sand. But these beaches mean something a little different to Eric Massey, a retired paratrooper from the 82nd Airborne Division.
All the things we read about when we were kids and went on to Ranger School and read about the Rangers climbing Point du Hoc and learned about the 2,000 men who died on these beaches in 1944. You know, it is it's hallowed ground for us, and it's absolutely an honor, obviously.
Soldiers had to climb the cliffs of Point du Hoc, crawl through barbed wire, and pass over the bodies of their comrades. Ivy Agee Jr., a soldier that stormed Omaha Beach, said that he still remembers the bodies 75 years later.
There's dead soldiers everywhere on the beach, and that's what hurt me so much.
These beaches stand as a constant reminder of those who lost their lives during the liberation of France. And those who visit find themselves in awe at what soldiers went through.
But seeing here just makes it, you feel like in awe how difficult it was for these soldiers to for instance, rope up these steep hills and trying to take the German weapons.
And for Massey, he wants to keep the memory alive through generations to come.
We put our feet in the water, put our hands in the sand, said a prayer for everyone that's right here. And yeah, it's good stuff. It's coming full circle for guys like me who are getting older now.
His prayers and the prayers of many others is that what happened on Omaha Beach will never be forgotten. Every single day, memories of the war, from the sights and sounds to the victories and defeats, disappear. Those men and women who worked tirelessly in the 1940s are now in their 80s and 90s. As of 2019, roughly 400,000 out of the 16 million Americans who served during this time are still alive. And according to the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, 348 of those veterans die every single day. Ivy Agee Jr., one of the few survivors of D-Day, grew old in his hometown of Gordonsville, Tennessee. Agee was a Tennessee war hero, and he passed away late last year. I had the chance to sit down with him before his passing and hear his inspiring story. While everything was at stake, freedom, democracy, mom, and apple pie, a 21-year-old would pick up his load and storm the Omaha beaches.
Communique number 1, June 6th, Allied headquarters. Under command of General Eisenhower, Allied naval forces supported by strong air forces began landing Allied armies on the northern coast of France.
If God is with me, who can be against me?
These words still ring true 75 years later to Ivy Agee Jr., a survivor of World War II and one of the few remaining soldiers who stormed the beaches of Normandy. Now 96, Agee can still recall seeing thousands of his comrades lying in the red waters right before his eyes.
It was awful because there's a lot of blood shed, and that was hard for me to accept, to see all that blood. It just, did something to me inside that I couldn't get over it.
After so many years, Agee has tried to forget much of the war, but there are some things that this brave soldier can never forget.
So that's what hurt me so much. My comrade being dead, and I'd have to pass over them and leave them there.
Family and faith have remained a constant in Agee's life, especially during his time on Omaha Beach. Agee was awarded by both the French and American militaries as a part of the 29th Infantry Division.
That was their song, their motto, I guess you call it. "Tonight, let's go."
Agee served for 34 months overseas, separated from his family, his wife, and his nation, which he so dearly loves.
Oh yeah, I'm proud to be American. I'm glad I did what I did. I'm not sorry about anything I did, because I was doing it for my country and for God. Because I think God was with me all the way through it, or I wouldn't have made it.
"22 years old. That was the average age of a World War II soldier when they were separated from their families and sent overseas. Bill Allen, a Murfreesboro native, was only 19 when he was assigned to the death detail in the U.S. Navy. Today I get to speak with Bill Allen, the 94-year-old who stormed the beaches of Normandy over 75 years ago. He was on a ship that sank that day and has some memories that he'll never forget. So Bill, thank you so much for coming here today and sharing a little bit of your story with us.
Well, you are more than welcome.
So tell me a little bit about what life was like for you during the war.
Went into the Navy when I was 18, just straight out of high school. Went through boot camp, went to hospital corps school to make a medic. We loaded up couple of times, practice, go out the channel, turn around and come back and unload. But we got into the beach on D-Day. They were still trying to get possession of the beach. They're fighting right there on the beach, and we could not hit the beach as we were supposed to. We had to anchor out in some 3 or 4 feet of water, and open the bow doors, let the ramp down, and the Army personnel, tanks, equipment began to unload. We saw foot soldiers with those heavy packs on their back go down the ramp, lose their footing, drown right there at the end of the ramp. I saw soldiers that made it to the beach, 8, 10 dozen steps. Sniper would get them, would step on a landmine. Life ended right there. Terrible sight. There's a bunch of boys that became men overnight that night. But we loaded carriages all night long that night, and left out early the next morning, coming back to England with a load of casualties. We cleaned them up, those that died. Most of them were muddy, bloody, dirty. We cleaned them up best we could. Searched for a dog tag. Most of them had the dog tags around the neck, but identified who they were, wrapped them in a blanket, put them in a cooling unit there to hold until we got back to England, where they was removed to the morgue. We made 3 trips in, successful. Our 4th trip in, we were loaded with 300 combat engineers, 300 battalion of combat engineers, and so we anchored out about 5 miles off the beach there, Omaha Beach, and had lunch. And I got through eating lunch. I came out up on the top side and was walking down the rail there, and up towards the bow, and walked up on 2 soldiers standing there talking, and I just stopped. We started conversation. I don't remember what it was about, but I'm sure it wasn't too important. But anyway, we talked a few minutes. One of them said, "This is our truck right here." I said, "Let's just get in and sit down." So we did, and we hadn't much more than got in there and got comfortable and started talking until we hit a big swell, went out. We just dropped right down on a mine, and it blew us out of the water. It was, everybody was jumping overboard that could. A terrible situation. But I'm a poor swimmer, and I stood there debating whether to try to jump and drown, or stay on the ship and go down with it and drown. That was the only future I could see. And just about the last chance, the ship was going down, so it was a matter of something had to be done pretty quick, whatever. And just about the last chance, I heard somebody holler, "Bill, Bill." And I looked out here, I guess maybe 100, 125 feet, and another medic had managed to get a life raft loose. And he said, "You can't jump out here." He said, "You can't swim in this rough water." He said, "I believe I can get in there to you." So he took the risk of losing his life too to come get me, because when that ship went under, it would create a suction and pull everything in with it. But he never slowed down. He started paddling and kicking to get in there to me. And he got, I guess, I don't know, 20 feet, I guess, 25. And I said, Jack, I believe I can jump that far. And I almost did. But anyway, we got on the life raft. And then in trying to get away, we picked up 4 Army personnel. 2 of them weren't hurt too bad, but 2 of them was hurt very seriously. We had to get them out of the water onto the raft, which was a pretty tough job. So we put up alongside this Liberty ship. The old skipper standing up there on the fantail. He asked if he'd take any survivors. And he said, yes, I'll take all you bring me. So with that, they dropped a wire basket over the side with a rope on each end. We loaded the Army personnel, and we would come up, but they'd pull the got through with the Army personnel. I don't know why. Don't guess I'll ever know. But they dropped a cargo net over for the other medic and myself. We didn't think we were hurt, and as far as shedding blood, we weren't. But he told us that you boys go on down to the galley there and get you a cup of coffee and something to eat if you want to. So we did, and couldn't swallow a thing. And I don't remember what I ordered, but bro, that was good food. Wasn't a thing wrong with it, but just couldn't swallow. Jack was the same way. And the old skipper came in a little bit, laid his hand on our shoulder, and he said, you boys have had a pretty hard day today. He said, I've cleaned out a compartment for you down the passageway there. He said, go on down there and go to bed. Maybe that'll help you. But we did, but we rolled and tumbled, and no way if we closed our eyes, we relived it. If we didn't, we relived what had happened that day. It was sometime after midnight. I rolled over, and Jack said, Bill, you awake? I said, Jack, I think I'll never go back to sleep. I think the most important thing is to remember the price has been paid for the freedom that we have today. We think of the cost of a ship or the cost of a plane, and we lost several, and ammunition in this. But the real cost was the blood and the pain and the grief that's been paid by the American people, the mothers, the wives, other members of the family that have lost loved ones. You figure that cost in. Freedom is the most important thing that we've ever bought in this country.
So before we sat down today, you were telling me a little bit about how faith played a huge role in your time during the war. And I felt like a lot of D-Day veterans that I've had the opportunity to speak with have said that as well. So tell me a little bit about that.
Every time I think about another that had died, I think about some way that I had been protected. And sometime before daylight, in the early hours of June the 20th, 1944, I finally convinced myself that luck hadn't carried me that far. It had to be God. While we was in court school, there was about a dozen of us, all Southern boys in Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi. Just got to be very, very close friends and stuck together all the way through. But the first Sunday out, one of the boys said, you know, said, I miss going to church. The LST had we had no chaplain, no chapel, no facilities for religion whatsoever. But we had no facilities for recreation either. We had what we had to have, but the extras we didn't have on LST. But another boy said, well, I got a little New Testament here. I said, let's just say we'll read a few verses of Scripture. Well, 3 or 4 sat down and joined, and the next Sunday, 3 or 4 more. And We built up, I guess, most of it was 10 or 12. But every Sunday we'd have a little simple, last 5, 10 minutes at the most. But when we got hit and they found out who had been killed or not, every one of us that had attended that little simple church service got off. So out of the 28, those others that attended that church service, every one of us got off. Now, some of us hurt very seriously, but we all survived and got back home.
I had the opportunity to go to Normandy last summer, and one of my favorite things about the trip by far was the American Cemetery. Before we started talking, you told me a lot about how that played a huge role in your trip back and how that just led to so many emotions that you had. So tell me about some of those feelings that you had walking through that cemetery so many years later.
I don't believe I've ever been to a more sacred place than that was. Quiet, reverent, beautiful place. One of our doctors, we had 2 doctors, one of our doctors was buried there. We spent quite a bit of time there at his grave.
Thank you so much, Mr. Allen, for telling us your story and for sitting down with us today.
Well, you are more than welcome, and I hope you get a good grade out of it.
Stories like Allen's are becoming few and far between as each anniversary goes by. I want to say thank you to the veterans, Ed Covington, Ivy Agee Jr., and Bill Allen. Thank you for trusting me to tell your stories. It's been my privilege to bring you the moments of bravery, freedom, and honor for those who gave all of that and so much more. I'm Megan Cole. Good night.